I never expected to find the letter that would change everything while cleaning out Walter's study. My hands trembled as I held the yellowed envelope, postmarked 15 years ago, addressed to my dearest Lila, to be opened upon my passing. My name is Lila, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had finally found the family I'd always dreamed of. The Parkers, Walter and Elsie, had been my safe harbor after years in foster care, and their grandson Ethan became my husband. But now, with both of them gone and this letter in my hands, I realized how naive I'd been. Lila? Are you up there? Celeste's voice carried from downstairs, making me jump. I quickly tucked the letter into my back pocket. Just finishing up in the study, I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood stairs. Celeste appeared in the doorway, perfectly coiffed as always. Mother wants to know if you found the deed to the summer cottage yet. The realtor is getting impatient. I haven't come across it, I said, gesturing to the boxes around me. There's still quite a bit to go through. She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the shelves like a predator. Well, we need to get this wrapped up soon. The market won't stay hot forever. I didn't realize we were in such a rush to sell everything, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Celeste's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Mother's not getting any younger, dear. She needs to simplify her life now that Walter's gone. You understand, don't you? I nodded, but my mind was racing. Walter had always said the summer cottage would stay in the family. He'd made that clear at countless Sunday dinners. Something wasn't adding up. Oh, and what's this? Celeste picked up an ornate wooden box from Walter's desk. My heart stopped. It was the box he'd always kept locked. The one he'd mentioned in hushed conversations with Elsie when they thought no one was listening. I haven't had a chance to look through that yet, I said, reaching for it. Celeste pulled it away. No need to trouble yourself. I'll take it down to Mother. She'll know what to do with it. Actually, I think. Lila, darling, she cut me off, her tone sharp despite her smile. You've been so helpful with all this, but remember, you're not actually a Parker. Some things should stay in the family. The words hit like a slap. Before I could respond, she was already heading for the door, the box tucked under her arm. Oh, and Ethan called while you were up here, she added. He'll be late tonight, something about a client dinner. I told him not to worry, that you'd understand. I waited until her footsteps faded before pulling out Walter's letter. My hands shook as I broke the seal. My dearest Lila, if you're reading this, then both Elsie and I are gone. There are things you need to know about the cottage and the box in my study, things I couldn't tell you while I was alive. What's inside that box belongs to you, not just as my granddaughter-in-law, but as the daughter of my heart. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, no matter what they might claim. And whatever you do, don't let Celeste. The letter cut off there, the rest of the page torn away. I sank into Walter's old leather chair, my mind racing. What was in that box that was so important? And why had Walter been so worried about Celeste? I pulled out my phone to text Ethan, then stopped. If Celeste was lying about the client dinner, what else was she lying about? And more importantly, who could I really trust? One thing was certain. I needed to get that box back before Celeste could open it. The only question was how. The next morning, I found Vivian in her garden, methodically deadheading her prized roses. 6 months ago, she would have greeted me with a warm smile and an extra pair of gardening gloves. Today, she barely looked up. Have you seen the box Celeste took from Walter's study? I asked, kneeling beside her. Oh, that old thing? Vivian's scissors snipped sharply through a stem. She mentioned finding it. Probably just more paperwork to sort through. It was locked, I said carefully. Did she manage to open it? Vivian's hands stilled. Lila's dear, I know you mean well, but perhaps it's time to step back a bit. The family needs space to grieve. The family? The words felt like acid in my mouth. I thought I was family. Of course you are, through Ethan. She resumed her pruning. But Walter and Elsie? Well, blood is different, isn't it? I thought about the torn letter in my pocket, about all the Sunday afternoons Walter had spent teaching me chess in his study. They never made me feel different. They were kind people, Vivian agreed, her voice softening. But they're gone now, and things must change. Celeste is helping me put everything in order. By selling the cottage? The words burst out before I could stop them. Vivian's scissors clattered to the ground. How did you? I overheard, I said quickly. But Walter always said. Walter isn't here anymore. Celeste's voice cut through the morning air. She stood at the garden gate, holding 2 coffee cups. Mother, I brought your morning latte. I watched as Vivian's whole demeanor shifted, straightening up like a puppet on strings. Thank you, darling. You always know exactly what I need. Celeste handed her mother the coffee, then turned to me with a practiced smile. Lila, I didn't expect to see you here so early. Shouldn't you be at work? I took the morning off, I said, meeting her gaze. I wanted to talk about the box. Oh, that old thing? Celeste waved dismissively. Nothing but some dusty photographs and old receipts. I've already sorted through it. My stomach dropped. You opened it? Of course. We need to be efficient about clearing out the house. She paused, studying me. Unless there was something specific you were looking for? I thought about Walter's letter, about his warning, just wondering if there might be some family memories worth keeping. How thoughtful, Celeste said, her smile never wavering. But Mother and I have it under control. Don't we, Mother? Vivian nodded, not meeting my eyes. Yes, of course. Celeste knows best. Later that afternoon, I sat in my car outside Walter and Elsie's old house, watching Celeste's Mercedes pull out of the driveway. As soon as she was gone, I dialed Ethan's number. Hey, I've been trying to reach you, I said when he answered. Where were you last night? Client dinner, like I told Celeste to tell you. He sounded distracted. Listen, I'm heading into another meeting. Did you know they're selling the cottage? A long pause. It's complicated, Lila. Mother needs the money, and Celeste thinks. Since when does Celeste make all the decisions? She's just trying to help, Ethan said, his voice tight. Look, can we talk about this later? I really need to go. After he hung up, I sat there, feeling the weight of Walter's torn letter in my pocket. Something caught my eye, a familiar figure slipping out the back door of the house. It was Vivian, clutching something to her chest as she hurried toward her car. I squinted through the windshield. In her arms was Walter's wooden box. My phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Dinner at Mother's tonight. 7 p.m. Family meeting about the cottage. Don't be late. I stared at the message, then back at Vivian's retreating figure. Whatever was in that box, whatever Walter had tried to warn me about, I had a feeling tonight's dinner was going to change everything. And I needed to be ready. The family dinner felt like walking into a trap. Vivian's dining room, usually warm and inviting, now seemed staged, like a set where everyone had rehearsed their lines except me. The wooden box sat prominently on the sideboard, almost taunting me. I made your favorite, dear, Vivian said, setting down a casserole. Elsie's recipe. My throat tightened. You never asked for that recipe while she was alive. Celeste cleared her throat. Let's discuss the cottage. The realtor has an interested buyer. I found something interesting today, I interrupted, pulling out Walter's letter. While cleaning the study, Ethan reached for my hand under the table, but I pulled away. His silence all week had said enough. More paperwork? Celeste's smile didn't reach her eyes. I thought we'd cleared everything important. It's a letter. From Walter. I watched Vivian's hands shake as she served the food. About the box. And the cottage. The clatter of Vivian's serving spoon against the dish echoed through the room. Celeste's posture stiffened. Mother, why don't you sit? Celeste's voice was honey-sweet. You look tired. I'm fine, Vivian said, but her eyes darted between the box and me. I pressed on. Walter was very specific about the cottage staying in the family, and about certain items being protected. That letter is clearly a forgery, Celeste cut in. Mother, show her what we found in the box. Those old bank statements. Vivian didn't move. Mother, Vivian's hands twisted her napkin. I haven't actually opened it yet. Celeste's facade cracked. What do you mean? You told me. I couldn't find the key, Vivian whispered. And something Walter said before I just couldn't. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small brass key. You mean this key? The room went silent. Elsie had given it to me years ago, on my wedding day. Family treasures need proper guardians, she'd said with a wink. Where did you get that? Celeste demanded, standing up. Sit down, Celeste. Ethan's voice surprised us all. Let's hear what's in the letter. Oh, now you want to hear things? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Where was this interest when your sister was? A loud crash interrupted me. We all turned to see Vivian clutching the edge of the sideboard, the box lying open at her feet. Papers and photographs scattered across the floor. But it was the small leather journal that caught my eye. As I bent to pick it up, Celeste lunged forward. "Don't touch that." Too late. The journal fell open, and several bank statements fluttered out. Recent ones, with Celeste's name on them, and transactions that made my blood run cold. "You've been stealing from her," I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. "That's why you want to sell the cottage. You need to cover your tracks." "Celeste." Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "What is she talking about?" "Mother, I can explain. The money from father's life insurance," Vivian said, realization dawning on her face. "The investments you said you were managing for me. Everything I did was for this family." Celeste's composure shattered. "While you were all playing happy families with your precious Lila, I was trying to keep us afloat. By stealing." Ethan stood up, his face hard. "By selling our grandfather's cottage? Your grandfather?" Celeste laughed bitterly. "He wasn't even your real grandfather. Just like she's not really family." The room spun. I grabbed Walter's letter, my anchor in this storm. He was more real than you'll ever understand. I turned to leave, but Vivian's voice stopped me. "Wait." She picked up something from the scattered papers, a sealed envelope with my name on it. "There's more." Celeste moved to intercept it, but Ethan blocked her path. "Enough, Celeste. It's over." I took the envelope with trembling hands, feeling its weight, and the weight of all our fractured bonds, as police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called them, and nothing would ever be the same. The police questioning lasted 3 hours. I sat in our living room afterward, Walter's second letter still unopened in my lap, while Ethan paced by the window. "They're charging her with fraud," he said finally. "Multiple counts." I traced the edge of the envelope. "Are you okay?" "My sister's going to jail, my mother's savings are gone, and our family's falling apart." He stopped pacing. "What do you think?" The bitterness in his voice made me flinch. "I didn't want any of this. Didn't you?" He turned to face me. "You could have shown me the first letter privately. Instead, you turned dinner into a spectacle." "Like you turned our marriage into a spectacle?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "All those client dinners that Celeste kept covering for." "Don't." His face darkened. "That's not fair. Neither is lying to your wife." A knock at the door interrupted us. Through the window, I saw Vivian standing on our porch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Ethan opened the door. "Mother, you should be resting. I need to speak with Lila." Her voice was hoarse. "Alone." Ethan hesitated, then grabbed his keys. "I'll get some groceries." After he left, Vivian sat across from me, her hands clutching her purse. The detective showed me everything. The transfers, the forged signatures. She swallowed hard. "She's been stealing from me for years." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "No, I'm sorry." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I chose to believe her lies about you because they were easier than facing the truth about her." She pulled something from her purse, a faded photograph. "Do you know what this is?" I leaned forward. The picture showed Walter and Elsie standing in front of the cottage, arms around a teenage girl I didn't recognize. "That's Celeste's mother," Vivian said quietly. "Walter's first wife." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" "She died when Celeste was young. Walter never got over it. When he married me years later, Celeste was already grown, but she never forgave him for moving on." Vivian's hands trembled. "Or for loving you the way he couldn't love her." I thought about Celeste's bitterness, her desperate need for control. The cottage was meant for her originally, but she rejected it, and Walter, when he remarried. He changed his will after your wedding, leaving it to you and Ethan instead. Vivian met my eyes. "That's what's in that second letter you're holding. The legal transfer." My fingers tightened around the envelope. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand." She stood up shakily. "And because I need your help." The detective found evidence that Celeste has been moving money offshore. If we don't act quickly, everything will be gone. Everything. The cottage. The family savings. Your inheritance. She took a deep breath. I know I have no right to ask, but you're the only one who can stop her now. You have the legal authority through Walter's will. I stared at the unopened letter. Does Ethan know about this? No one does. Except Celeste. Vivian moved toward the door. She's being released on bail tomorrow morning. Whatever you're going to do, it needs to be before then. After she left, I finally opened the second letter. Inside was exactly what Vivian had described: legal documents transferring ownership of the cottage and a significant trust to me, along with a handwritten note. My dearest Lila, some treasures are meant to be protected, not possessed. Choose wisely. Walter. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Smart girl, finding those bank statements. But you're not the only one with secrets. Ask your husband about April 15th. See. I heard Ethan's key in the lock and quickly slipped the phone into my pocket. As he walked in with groceries, I watched him carefully, wondering what other revelations this night would bring, and whether our marriage would survive them. I spent the night digging through old bank records, trying to piece together what happened on April 15th. Around dawn, my phone lit up with a text from Mason, Ethan's childhood friend who now worked at the bank. Found something. Meet me at Parker's Cafe. Come alone. The irony of the location wasn't lost on me. Walter used to take me there every Sunday after chess lessons. Now it was just another reminder of what I'd lost. Mason was already waiting in a corner booth, looking nervous. You shouldn't have told the police about the offshore accounts. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. How did you? Because I helped set them up. He slid a folder across the table. Ethan asked me to. The world tilted sideways. What? April 15th. Mason wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan came to me about moving some money. Said it was for Celeste, to help with mother's care. I didn't ask questions. We've been friends since kindergarten. My hands shook as I opened the folder. There they were, transfer records with Ethan's signature, dating back months before Walter's death. Why are you showing me this? Because Celeste was at the bank this morning. Mason lowered his voice. She's trying to empty the accounts before the freeze takes effect. All of them, including yours. She can't access my accounts. She can with power of attorney. He tapped the folder. Signed by Ethan last month. The cafe's morning chatter faded to white noise. I thought about Ethan's late nights, his defensive behavior, the way he'd avoided my questions about Celeste. My phone buzzed. Another text from Celeste. Tick-tock. The bank opens in an hour. I have to go. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee. Lila, wait. Mason grabbed my arm. There's more. The cottage, it's already sold. The paperwork went through yesterday. That's impossible. I have Walter's letter, dated after the sale was finalized. He released my arm. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I drove to the cottage on autopilot, Walter's words echoing in my head. Some treasures are meant to be protected, not possessed. The front door was unlocked. Inside, Vivian sat at the kitchen table, staring at an empty teacup. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. I thought I was protecting him. Her voice was hollow. My son. My daughter. My family. By letting Celeste steal everything? By keeping the peace. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. But peace built on lies isn't peace at all, is it? My phone buzzed again. Ethan, where are you? We need to talk. He's not who you think he is, Vivian said quietly. Neither of them are. And who am I? I asked, Walter's second letter burning a hole in my pocket. The orphan who married into the wrong family? No. Vivian stood up, suddenly looking more like the strong woman I'd first met. You're the daughter Walter chose. The one who saw through our lies. She pulled out a key, old brass, different from the one I had. There's a safe in his study, behind the chessboard. Why are you helping me now? Because you were right about one thing. She pressed the key into my hand. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And I'm choosing to make things right. My phone lit up one last time. Celeste, too late, little sister. Check the news. As if on cue, Vivian's phone started ringing. She answered, listened, then went pale. The police just arrested Ethan, she whispered. For conspiracy and fraud. I clutched the key, feeling its weight, the weight of choices, of betrayals, of everything Walter had tried to protect me from. What's in the safe? I asked. The truth. Vivian grabbed her car keys. But we have to hurry. Celeste will be looking for it too. As we drove back to Walter's house, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, not just for Walter's memory, but for all of us who'd been caught in this web of lies. And maybe, just maybe, about finding out who I really was in the process. Walter's study looked exactly as he'd left it, chess pieces frozen mid-game on the board. Vivian and I had barely made it inside when we heard the front door open downstairs. Up here. Celeste's voice rang out. I saw their cars. Vivian's hands shook as she helped me move the chessboard. We don't have much time. The safe was small, built into the wall. As I inserted the key, footsteps echoed up the stairs. Looking for this? Celeste appeared in the doorway, holding up a familiar envelope. The real second letter from Walter. The one that proves everything you think you know is wrong. My key wouldn't turn. That's impossible. I have the letter right here. You have what I wanted you to have. She stepped into the room, Mason following behind her. My stomach dropped. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mason. I'm sorry, Lila. He looked genuinely pained. She has proof that could ruin my career. I had to tell her about our meeting. Celeste smiled. Family's complicated, isn't it? Just ask your husband. Oh wait, you can't. He's in jail because of you. Because of me? I turned to Vivian. Tell her. But Vivian was gone, the study door closing behind her with a soft click. Mother knows when to cut her losses, Celeste said. Unlike you. She held up her phone, showing me a document. Want to know what April 15th really means? It's the day Walter changed his will after I showed him proof that you were stealing from him. That's a lie. Is it? She nodded to Mason, who pulled out more papers. Bank statements, transfer records, all with my signature. All forged, but who would believe me now? Why? My voice cracked. Why go through all this? Because you took what was mine. The facade cracked, real pain bleeding through. This house, the cottage, Walter's love. It was supposed to be mine. I was his family first. The safe's lock finally clicked. Inside was a single photograph. Celeste as a child, with Walter and her mother. On the back, in Walter's handwriting, the daughter of my heart, always. He never stopped loving you, I whispered. Don't. She snatched the photo away. You don't get to pretend you understand. But I do. I thought about the torn letter, about all the pieces finally falling into place. That's why you had to destroy everything. Because he loved both of us. Celeste's laugh was bitter. And look where his love got us. You'll lose everything, the house, the inheritance, even Ethan. The police already have evidence of your fraud. Mason made sure of that. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Check your email. B. It's over, Lila. Celeste moved toward the door. By tomorrow, you'll be joining your husband in jail. A fitting end for the orphan who tried to steal my family. After they left, I opened my email with trembling hands. There was a single video file from Vivian's security footage from Walter's study, dated April 15th. In it, Celeste and Ethan argued about forged documents, about framing me, about everything. But it was too late. The evidence against me was already with the police. Ethan was in jail. The cottage was sold. And I was alone in Walter's study, surrounded by the ghosts of two families I'd lost. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Ethan. Whatever happens, remember the chessboard. Last game, last move. I'm sorry for everything. I looked at the frozen game on Walter's board. The white queen was one move from checkmate, but it wasn't the right piece. This wasn't how Walter played. With shaking hands, I lifted the queen. Underneath was a small USB drive. My phone lit up one last time. Vivian, the game isn't over until all the pieces are in play. Meet me at the police station. Bring the drive. I stared at the chessboard, at the careful setup that had been waiting all this time. Walter's final game, his final lesson about family and justice and the choices we make. The question was, did I have the courage to make the right move? The police station buzzed with fluorescent-lit tension as I walked in, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. Vivian sat in the waiting area, her usual perfect posture crumpled. She's in there now, Vivian said, nodding toward an interview room. Trying to finalize the charges against you. Through the window, I could see Celeste talking to two detectives, her hands moving in confident gestures. The perfect performance, as always. "Did you watch what's on the drive?" Vivian asked. I shook my head. Some games you can't take back once you start them. The interview room door opened. Celeste stepped out, freezing when she saw me. For a moment, her mask slipped, showing real fear. "What are you doing here?" "Finishing the game." I held up the USB drive. The one Walter started. She recovered quickly, smile sliding back into place. "More desperate tricks?" "The police already have their evidence." "Do they?" I turned to the detectives. "Did she tell you about the real April 15th meeting? The one where she and Ethan discussed framing me?" "They don't need to hear your lies," Celeste snapped, but her voice wavered. I plugged the drive into a nearby computer. The screen filled with Walter's face, a video diary entry. "If you're watching this," he began, "then the worst has happened. Celeste has chosen revenge over family. Again." Celeste lunged for the computer, but Vivian caught her arm. "No more running, daughter. No more lies." The video continued, showing Walter's detailed records of Celeste's schemes, the forged documents, the offshore accounts, the systematic destruction of evidence. But it was the last clip that made Celeste sink into a chair, security footage of her threatening Ethan, forcing him to choose between protecting me or watching his mother lose everything. "Turn it off," Celeste whispered. "He knew," I said softly. "Walter knew everything. But he still kept that photo of you. Still loved you until the end." "Stop it. He didn't choose me over you, Celeste. He chose to protect both of us from yourself. You don't understand." She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "He left. When my mother died, he just moved on. Found a new family, a new daughter. Like we meant nothing." "No," Vivian stepped forward. "He tried to help you heal. But you wouldn't let him." The detectives moved in, but I held up my hand. "Wait, there's one more thing." I pulled out the photograph from the safe. "He kept this all these years, Celeste. On the back, read what he wrote." Her hands shook as she turned the photo over. "The daughter of my heart, always." And below it, "Remember, love multiplies, it doesn't divide." The fight seemed to drain out of her. When the detectives stepped forward again, she didn't resist. "The charges against your husband will be dropped," one detective told me. "We'll need statements from both of you." As they led Celeste away, she stopped. "Why didn't you just destroy me when you had the chance?" "It's what I would have done." "Because that's the difference between us," I said. "I wanted justice. You wanted revenge. Walter taught me there's a difference." After she was gone, Vivian touched my arm. "Walter would be proud. But what about Ethan? Can you forgive him?" I thought about the chessboard, about Ethan's desperate move to protect both his sister and his wife, about choices and consequences and the complexity of love. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I think Walter left us one last lesson about family, that sometimes the hardest moves are the ones that hurt the most, but lead to the right ending." My phone buzzed, a text from the prison. Ethan was being released. Another choice waiting to be made. "Some games don't end with checkmate," I said, more to myself than Vivian. "Sometimes they end with understanding why the pieces moved the way they did." I headed for the door, ready to face whatever came next. Behind me, Vivian's voice was soft but clear. "That, my dear, is exactly what Walter was trying to teach us all along." 1 year later, I stood in the cottage's renovated kitchen, watching autumn leaves dance across the lawn where Walter and Elsie used to host family picnics. My daughter Ivy slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby, her tiny hands clutching the chess piece that had changed everything, the White Queen. The sound of gravel crunching outside announced Vivian's arrival. She'd been visiting weekly since Ivy's birth, slowly rebuilding what Celeste had tried to destroy. "The garden's coming along beautifully," she said, setting down a familiar wooden box on the counter. "Walter would have loved it." I touched the box gently. "You found it in Celeste's storage unit." The police finally released her personal items. She hesitated. "She's asking to see you." The old anger flickered, then faded. "Not yet." Vivian nodded, understanding in her eyes. We'd all learned that healing had its own timeline. Even Ethan, who now lived in the city and visited Ivy on weekends, was still finding his way back. There's something else, Vivian said, opening the box. Inside lay a stack of letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Celeste in Walter's handwriting. He wrote to her every week after she cut him off. Never sent them. Did you read them? Just one. She pulled out a letter dated the week before his death. I think you should see it. Before I could respond, footsteps sounded on the porch. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking uncertain despite our standing arrangement. I can come back. No, I said, surprising myself. Stay. He moved to Ivy's bassinet, his face softening as he watched her sleep. Some wounds healed slower than others, but they did heal. I'll leave you to it, Vivian said, heading for the door. She paused. Oh, and Lila? Thank you for not selling the cottage. Some treasures really are meant to be protected. After she left, I opened Walter's last letter, Ethan reading over my shoulder. My dearest Celeste, by now, Lila will have found the truth. Not just about the money or the cottage, but about family, how it bends but doesn't break, how it forgives but doesn't forget. I chose her not to replace you, but to remind me that love grows even in the hardest soil. The chess set you loved as a child sits in my study, waiting for the day you'll teach your own children that every piece matters, even the ones we think we can sacrifice. The game isn't about winning, it's about understanding why we play. I hope someday you'll understand that too. With endless love, Walter. Ivy stirred, her small sounds filling the quiet room. Ethan reached for her, then stopped, looking at me for permission. She has your eyes, I said softly. And Walter's chess piece. He liked that. I folded the letter carefully. She'll need to learn the game someday. Will you teach her? The question hung between us, heavy with meaning. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the leaves again, nature's endless cycle of endings and beginnings. We both will, I decided. She should know all the stories, the hard ones and the healing ones. Ethan nodded, emotion crossing his face. And Celeste. I thought about Walter's words, about love growing in hard soil, about games that never really end, just change shape. Eventually, I said, when we're ready. Later that evening, I sat in Walter's old chair, watching Ivy sleep. The wooden box sat open beside me, full of undelivered love letters and complicated truths. On the wall hung 2 photographs, Walter with young Celeste and Walter with me at my wedding. Different pieces of the same game. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. She's beautiful. Thank you for the picture Vivian sent. See. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Some moves take time to play out. In the distance, a chessboard waited, its pieces arranged in eternal possibility. Ready for the next game, the next lesson, the next chance to understand what family really means. And this time we'd all play it differently.